Imagine falling asleep after the longest day of your life. The streets of ancient Rome have finally gone quiet. The shouting merchants are gone. The hammering of blacksmiths has faded into the distance. Even the drunken voices from the tavern below your apartment seem quieter now. You lie down on a thin straw mattress, exhausted. Your eyes close. A few moments later, something crawls across your arm. You brush it away without thinking. Then another follows. And another. Within minutes, dozens of tiny creatures emerge from cracks in the bed frame, from gaps in the wall, from hidden spaces beneath the mattress. They are hungry. And tonight, just like every night, they have come for your blood. For many Romans, bedtime was not a time of comfort. It was the beginning of a nightly battle against some of the most persistent parasites in human history. The enemy was already waiting in the darkness. Modern people often imagine ancient Rome as a world of marble palaces, magnificent temples, and engineering wonders. The reality for most citizens looked very different. More than 1 million people crowded into the city during its peak. Most did not live in luxurious villas. They lived inside cramped apartment blocks known as insulae. Families squeezed into tiny rooms stacked several stories high. Ventilation was poor. Sunlight rarely reached the interior, waste accumulated in nearby streets, moisture seeped into wooden beams and walls. For bed bugs, these conditions were paradise. The insects thrived in warm, crowded environments where humans slept close together every night. And Rome provided exactly that. Long before electric lights, pesticides, or modern sanitation, entire neighborhoods unknowingly became breeding grounds for blood-feeding pests. The Romans knew these creatures well. Ancient writers described small biting insects that hid during the day and emerged at night. People often woke with itching skin, red welts, and mysterious bites covering their arms, necks, and legs. Most victims never saw the insects while they were feeding. Bed bugs are experts at remaining hidden. Their flattened bodies allow them to squeeze into impossibly narrow spaces. A crack no thicker than a coin could shelter dozens of them. During daylight hours, they remained concealed. After darkness arrived, they emerged silently. A sleeping Roman might never know how many insects shared the room with him. The only evidence appeared the next morning. Fresh bites, fresh blood stains, and another sleepless night. One of the greatest advantages bed bugs possessed was patience. Unlike many pests, they did not need to feed every day. A bed bug could survive for astonishing lengths of time without a meal. That meant simply leaving a room empty for a few days accomplished nothing. The insects waited. Weeks could pass, sometimes months. Then, as soon as a new occupant arrived and settled into bed, the parasites returned to feeding. This made infestations incredibly difficult to eliminate. Romans frequently moved between rented rooms, inns, and shared housing. Unfortunately, bed bugs often traveled with them. Every blanket, mattress, and wooden bed frame became a possible vehicle for spreading the infestation throughout the city. The poorest Romans suffered the most. Many families could not afford new furniture or fresh bedding. Mattresses were commonly stuffed with straw, reeds, wool, or other materials that gradually deteriorated over time. As the filling aged, countless hiding places developed inside. Dust accumulated. Moisture settled. Tiny cavities formed. For bed bugs, these mattresses were ideal homes. Night after night, the insects remained only inches away from their sleeping hosts. The family might spend years using the same bedding. Meanwhile, generations of bed bugs reproduced inside the mattress itself. The people sleeping there were never truly alone. Something else occupied the bed with them. Roman inns could be even worse. Travelers arriving from distant provinces often rented rooms for a night or two before continuing their journey. The bed served an endless stream of guests. Merchants, soldiers, pilgrims, laborers. Each visitor brought clothing, blankets, bags, and personal belongings. Each arrival created another opportunity for parasites to spread. A heavily infested traveler could unknowingly introduce bed bugs into a previously clean room. The next guest would then carry them elsewhere. Over time, entire networks of inns became connected through invisible infestations moving across the empire. The Roman road system helped people travel. It also helped bedbugs travel. The psychological toll was enormous. Imagine trying to sleep while knowing insects would emerge after dark. Many Romans likely experienced constant anxiety about bedtime. Sleep was already difficult in Rome. The city remained noisy long after sunset. Animals wandered the streets. Neighbors argued through thin walls. Fires broke out unexpectedly. Crime increased after dark. Adding blood-feeding parasites to this environment created yet another obstacle to rest. A person might spend hours scratching bites instead of sleeping. Others remained awake, listening for movement around the bed. Night became associated not with recovery, but with discomfort and irritation. The wealthiest Romans were not completely protected. Large villas appeared cleaner than crowded apartment blocks, but bedbugs cared little about social status. Even expensive furniture could harbor infestations. Luxury mattresses still provided hiding places. Servants moved constantly between rooms carrying bedding and fabrics. Visitors arrived from different regions. Trade goods entered the household every day. All of these pathways allowed parasites to spread. A senator sleeping beneath elaborate decorations could suffer the same bites as a laborer sleeping on a straw pallet. Bedbugs ignored wealth, power, and influence. Every sleeping human represented the same thing: a source of blood. Some Roman writers even recorded unusual beliefs about bed bugs. Ancient medical texts occasionally mentioned bizarre remedies involving the insects themselves. People in the ancient world often attributed medicinal properties to animals that modern science would find absurd. Crushed insects appeared in certain treatments. Other remedies focused on smoke, herbs, oils, or strong odors intended to drive pests away. Most offered limited success. Without understanding insect biology, Romans were fighting an enemy they barely understood. They recognized the symptoms. They recognized the bites. But they lacked the tools needed to permanently solve the problem. The battle continued generation after generation. As darkness settled over Rome each evening, millions of people prepared for bed. Some prayed. Some locked their doors. Some worried about fires or thieves. Few could escape another threat waiting much closer. Hidden inside mattresses. Concealed within wooden furniture. Packed deep into cracks in ancient walls. Tiny parasites waited patiently for the city to fall asleep. The grand monuments of Rome still stood above the streets. The empire still projected power across continents. Yet inside countless homes, a far smaller force ruled the night. And for many Romans, the real terror began only after the lights went out. In the next chapter, we will descend deeper into the crowded apartments, filthy bedding, and hidden breeding grounds that allowed bed bugs to thrive throughout ancient Rome. If you were an ordinary Roman, chances are you lived inside an insula, one of the towering apartment buildings that dominated much of the city. From the street, some looked impressive enough. But appearances were deceptive. Behind the walls existed a world of overcrowding, poor maintenance, and constant discomfort. Families often occupied a single room. Several people slept side by side. Children shared bedding with parents. Tenants moved in and out regularly. For bed bugs, every sleeping body represented opportunity. The more people packed into a room, the easier it became for the insects to find food. And in ancient Rome, crowded rooms were everywhere. The structure of these buildings made infestation almost unavoidable. Many insulae were constructed quickly and cheaply. Wooden beams supported upper floors. Plaster cracked over time. Walls shifted under the weight of countless residents. Tiny gaps formed everywhere. These openings became perfect hiding places. Unlike fleas, bed bugs preferred remaining close to their hosts. They did not need to travel far. A narrow crack beside a bed could support an entire colony. Every loose board, every damaged wall, every broken piece of furniture created another refuge. The building itself became part of the infestation. The upper floors were often the worst places to live. Rent was cheaper near the top. Poorer residents climbed multiple flights of stairs carrying water, food, and belongings every day. These rooms were hotter during summer and colder during winter. Ventilation was poor. The heat trapped inside the structure created conditions that bed bugs loved. Warmth accelerated their development. Eggs hatched faster. Young insects matured more quickly. Populations expanded rapidly. A room already infested could transform into a nightmare within months. The higher floors of Rome's apartments often became ideal breeding grounds. At night, the insects emerged with remarkable precision. Bed bugs are attracted by body heat and carbon dioxide. Although Romans did not understand the science, they experienced the consequences firsthand. The moment a sleeping family settled into bed, signals spread through the darkness. The insects became active. One by one, they crawled from hidden locations, across walls, along wooden frames, through bedding, toward exposed skin. The feeding process was surprisingly efficient. Many victims never woke during the attack. By dawn, the insects had already disappeared. Only the itching bites remained as evidence. The invaders seemed almost supernatural. A serious infestation rarely stayed confined to one room. Bed bugs moved between neighboring spaces. A family living next door might unknowingly share the same problem. The insects crawled through cracks connecting walls. They traveled along beams and floors. Sometimes they spread through furniture, moved from one apartment to another. An entire building could become contaminated. Residents might blame each other. Landlords might deny responsibility. Meanwhile, the insects continued multiplying. No matter which room someone rented, the pests were waiting nearby. Escaping often required leaving the entire building behind. Few poor Romans could afford such a luxury. The furniture itself became a hidden battlefield. Roman beds were often built from wood. To the human eye, a wooden frame looked solid. To bed bugs, it resembled a vast landscape filled with shelter. Tiny joints connected individual pieces. Small imperfections appeared as the wood aged. Natural cracks widened over time. Inside these spaces, insects gathered in large numbers. Females deposited eggs where they would remain protected. Young bed bugs matured unseen. A bed that appeared perfectly normal during daylight could conceal hundreds of parasites beneath its surface. The danger was literally built into the furniture. Cleaning was far more difficult than many people imagine. Modern households have vacuum cleaners, washing machines, and chemical treatments. Romans possessed none of these advantages. Bedding was expensive. Replacing mattresses regularly was unrealistic. Many residents used the same sleeping materials for years. Even when bedding was cleaned, complete elimination remained unlikely. Eggs hidden deep inside cracks often survived. A few remaining insects were enough to restart the infestation. The problem constantly returned. Families could spend months fighting bed bugs only to discover the bites appearing once again. The cycle seemed endless. Children suffered particularly badly. Young Romans often slept together on shared bedding. Their smaller bodies provided easy targets. A heavily infested mattress might expose them to repeated bites every night. The itching could become relentless. Scratching damaged the skin. Open wounds increased the risk of infection. Although bed bugs are not known for spreading major diseases like some other parasites, constant biting still created misery. For children already facing poor nutrition and harsh living conditions, another source of physical stress was the last thing they needed. Yet they could not escape it. Some residents attempted creative solutions. Strong-smelling herbs were placed around sleeping areas. Bundles of plants hung near beds. Various oils were applied to furniture. Smoke was sometimes used in hopes of driving insects away. Occasionally, these methods reduced activity temporarily. Rarely did they solve the underlying problem. The insects simply retreated deeper into their hiding places. Then they returned. The next night, or the night after that. Many Romans probably believed they had won, only to discover fresh bites a few days later. The enemy remained hidden, patient, and stubborn. As infestations worsened, entire apartments developed a reputation. Travelers avoided certain rooms. Tenants complained to neighbors. Stories circulated about buildings where sleep was nearly impossible. Yet even the worst infestations rarely appeared dramatic during daylight. That was the terrifying part. A visitor entering the room might see nothing unusual. The walls stood quietly. The bed looked harmless. The mattress seemed ordinary. But once darkness arrived, hundreds of insects emerged from countless hidden locations. Ancient Rome's apartments were not merely crowded homes. For many residents, they were ecosystems shared with a thriving population of blood-feeding parasites. And the deeper one looked into Roman daily life, the more disturbing the reality became. For centuries, Romans fought a war they could never truly win. Unlike invading armies, bedbugs could not be confronted on a battlefield. They carried no banners. They made no speeches. They announced no attacks. Most of the time, they remained completely invisible. A Roman might inspect his room and find nothing unusual. Yet hours later, he would wake covered in fresh bites. The enemy seemed to appear from nowhere. This mystery made infestations particularly frustrating. You cannot easily defeat something you rarely see. And for countless Romans, the insects remained hidden for most of their lives. Ancient medical writers were familiar with bed bugs. Some described the insects directly. Others mentioned the itching, irritation, and discomfort they caused. Yet understanding an enemy is not the same as defeating it. Roman medicine blended observation with superstition. Doctors often identified symptoms correctly but misunderstood the underlying causes. Without microscopes, modern biology, or knowledge of insect life cycles, many treatments relied on guesswork. People experimented with whatever remedies seemed promising. Some worked briefly. Most failed completely. The bugs continued feeding regardless of human theories. Nature cared little about medical confidence. One common strategy involved strong odors. Romans believed powerful smells could drive pests away. Bundles of herbs were placed around sleeping areas. Plants with pungent aromas were scattered beneath beds. Certain oils were rubbed onto furniture. The logic seemed reasonable. If insects disliked the smell, perhaps they would leave. Occasionally, these methods appeared successful. For a short time, bug activity might decrease. But infestations rarely disappeared. The insects simply retreated into deeper hiding places. Once the scent faded, they returned. The relief was temporary. The problem remained. Night after night, the bites continued. Smoke became another weapon in the Roman arsenal. Some households attempted to fumigate rooms using burning materials. Doors and windows were closed. Smoke filled the interior. Residents hoped the insects would suffocate or flee. The process was unpleasant. Eyes burned. Breathing became difficult. Furniture absorbed the smell. Yet even after enduring hours of discomfort, many families discovered the infestation survived. Bedbugs excel at hiding. Deep inside cracks and crevices, some escaped exposure. Those survivors quickly rebuilt the population. A single successful hiding place could undo an entire fumigation effort. The war resumed immediately. The wealthy occasionally replaced bedding altogether. For poor families, this was nearly impossible. A mattress represented a significant investment. Discarding it carried financial consequences. Even if replacement was affordable, success was not guaranteed. The insects often lived beyond the mattress itself. They occupied walls, furniture, floorboards, storage chests, curtains. A family could throw away its bed only to discover fresh bites weeks later. The source had never been removed. The infestation simply shifted locations. Many Romans learned an expensive lesson. Replacing possessions did not necessarily eliminate the enemy. Perhaps the most dangerous misconception involved cleanliness. People often assumed dirty homes caused infestations. Certainly, crowded and neglected environments encouraged pest problems. Yet bedbugs follow blood, not filth. Even well-maintained households could become infested. A wealthy merchant might keep spotless rooms and still suffer nightly bites. A traveler could unknowingly introduce insects through clothing or luggage. A guest could carry them from another building. This unpredictability frustrated Roman residents. No amount of sweeping guaranteed safety. No level of wealth ensured protection. Anyone who slept was a potential victim. The insects possessed another advantage that Romans never fully understood. Bedbugs reproduce rapidly under favorable conditions. A small infestation can become a major one surprisingly quickly. At first, a household might notice only a few bites. Nothing alarming. Nothing urgent. Weeks passed. Then more bites appeared. Soon multiple family members were affected. By the time the problem became obvious, hundreds of insects might already be hidden throughout the room. The delay worked in the bugs' favor. Their population expanded while humans remained unaware. The invasion was often well established before anyone recognized the threat. Travel spread the problem across the empire. Roman roads connected distant provinces with remarkable efficiency. Merchants crossed vast territories. Soldiers moved between military camps. Officials traveled for government business. Pilgrims journeyed to religious sites. Every traveler carried belongings. Every belonging offered potential shelter for insects. A few hidden bed bugs could survive an entire journey. When the traveler arrived at a new destination, the infestation arrived as well. In this way, Rome's greatest transportation achievement unintentionally benefited one of its smallest enemies. The empire connected people. It also connected parasites. Many Romans probably accepted bed bugs as an unavoidable part of life. When a problem persists for generations, people adapt. Complaints continue, but expectations change. Children grow up seeing adults struggle with infestations. Those children become adults who expect the same experience. What begins as an outrage eventually becomes normal. The insects became woven into daily existence. People developed routines around scratching bites. They exchanged remedies with neighbors. They warned guests about troublesome rooms. Rather than imagining complete victory, many simply hoped for temporary relief. The war had lasted too long, yet despite all their efforts, Romans never gained the upper hand. The insects remained resilient. Smoke failed. Herbs failed. Oils failed. Replacement furniture often failed. The enemy survived every generation. Hidden inside the heart of the greatest empire in the ancient world lived a parasite that refused to disappear. Roman engineers built aqueducts. Roman armies conquered kingdoms. Roman architects raised enormous monuments. But inside countless bedrooms, another story unfolded. A much smaller force continued winning battle after battle. And the consequences stretched far beyond a few itchy bites. For some Romans, the infestation affected sleep, health, productivity, and even their sense of security inside their own homes. The true cost of living with bed bugs was only beginning to reveal itself. For many Romans, the worst consequence of bed bugs was not the bites themselves. It was what happened afterward. A single night of poor sleep can leave a person tired and irritable. Now imagine experiencing that discomfort repeatedly for weeks, months, or even years. Each night began with uncertainty. Would the insects appear again? Would the itching return? Would sleep be interrupted before midnight? Many Romans likely climbed into bed already anticipating discomfort. Instead of looking forward to rest, they prepared themselves for another battle. And when bedtime becomes a source of anxiety, true rest becomes increasingly difficult to achieve. Sleep mattered enormously in the ancient world. Unlike modern societies, Romans had no caffeine-filled convenience stores open all night. Most physical labor demanded strength and endurance. Construction workers, merchants, dock laborers, farmers, and craftsmen depended on energy to survive. A poor night's sleep could affect an entire day's productivity. Someone exhausted from constant bites might struggle to focus. Mistakes became more common. Tempers grew shorter. Daily tasks fell heavier. Although Romans rarely connected these problems directly to bed bugs, the relationship was real. Tiny parasites feeding at night could influence the quality of life throughout the following day. Children may have suffered the greatest long-term consequences. A child repeatedly awakened by itching and discomfort would struggle to sleep deeply. Poor rest affects mood, concentration, and physical recovery. Ancient Roman childhood was already difficult. Disease, malnutrition, and dangerous living conditions were common realities. Adding nightly infestations only increased the burden. Parents could do little to help. They might apply homemade remedies. They might clean bedding when possible. Yet many lacked the resources necessary to eliminate the source. Night after night, the same cycle repeated itself. And the youngest members of society often paid the highest price. The scratching created another problem. Bed bug bites are intensely irritating. The natural response is to scratch. But constant scratching damages the skin. Small wounds develop. These openings can become infected. In a world without modern antibiotics, even minor infections carried risks. A simple bite could become inflamed. A scratch wound could worsen over time. Most people recovered without serious complications. Others were less fortunate. Roman cities contained countless bacteria and environmental hazards. Any break in the skin created an opportunity for additional problems. The insects themselves were unpleasant. The consequences of scratching sometimes proved worse. Imagine living in a room where you never felt completely safe. That psychological burden is difficult to measure. Bed bugs invade one of the most personal spaces in human life. The bed, the place where people seek comfort, security, and recovery. When that space becomes associated with irritation and stress, the effects can be surprisingly powerful. A Roman might inspect bedding repeatedly before sleep. Another might remain awake listening for movement. Some probably became hyper-aware of every sensation on their skin. Even harmless contact could feel suspicious. The infestation followed them not only physically, but mentally. The social impact should not be underestimated. Visitors might hesitate to stay overnight. Travelers could avoid certain inns known for infestations. Tenants complained about neighboring apartments. Accusations circulated. Rumors spread. Nobody wanted to be associated with a building infamous for bed bugs. Yet proving responsibility was nearly impossible. The insects moved freely between rooms and households. One family blamed another. Landlords blamed tenants. Tenants blamed landlords. Meanwhile, the bugs ignored the arguments entirely. They continued feeding regardless of who accepted responsibility. What makes bed bugs particularly fascinating is their persistence throughout human history. Empires rose and fell. Governments changed. Technologies advanced. Yet these insects adapted alongside humanity. The Romans were not unique in their struggle. Many civilizations before and after them faced the same enemy. But Rome's enormous population created ideal conditions for infestation on a massive scale. Millions of people living close together provided an endless supply of hosts. The insects found shelter in apartments, inns, villas, military camps, and roadside lodgings. Wherever humans slept, bed bugs followed. Their success became intertwined with human civilization itself. Ironically, the grandeur of Rome often hides these realities. History books celebrate emperors, military victories, and magnificent architecture. Tourists admire ruins and monuments. Documentaries showcase engineering achievements. All of that is important. Yet ordinary Romans experienced a very different reality. Most never commanded armies. Most never entered palaces. Most spent their lives worrying about rent, food, safety, illness, and sleep. When night fell, many confronted problems far more immediate than imperial politics. Among those problems were tiny blood-feeding parasites hiding only a few feet away. The daily reality of Rome was often far less glamorous than its legends suggest. Perhaps that is what makes bed bugs such a revealing part of Roman history. They remind us that the ancient world was populated by real people. People who felt discomfort. People who lost sleep. People who worried about their children. People who scratched bites in the middle of the night. The empire often appears distant and larger than life. But the presence of bed bugs brings the story back to a human scale. Behind every monument stood ordinary individuals dealing with ordinary frustrations. Some of those frustrations happened to be crawling through their bedrooms after dark. History becomes more personal when viewed through those experiences. So the next time you picture ancient Rome, imagine something beyond marble temples and triumphant generals. Picture a crowded apartment illuminated by a flickering oil lamp. A tired family prepares for sleep after a long day. The city outside slowly grows quiet. Children settle onto a straw mattress. Parents close their eyes. Darkness fills the room. Then, from hidden cracks in the walls and furniture, tiny shapes begin to emerge. The empire still stands powerful beyond the window. But inside the room, another force controls the night. For countless Romans, bed bugs were not a minor inconvenience. They were unwanted companions woven into daily life, silent invaders that transformed rest into struggle. And that is the dark truth about Roman bed bugs, one of the smallest creatures in ancient Rome, yet one of the most persistent nightmares its people ever faced.